Good e- Can everyone hear me properly? Can everyone? Okay, we're here. I think we're good. I think we're good. We have to get a. And we're back because. Hold on. And welcome tonight. It's EGI 2's 6 to 7 out of 10 game reviews from the EGI 2 bunker. Can everybody hear me correctly? We got the backdrop up. The bunker is secure. It's a bunker. We're doing this is a bunker show now. So this is the EGI 2 bunker, and we feel all that we're all ready for this, and we're all ready to talk about 6 to 7 out of 10 game reviews. Tonight we're doing a 6 to 7 out of 10 game review okay, well, the hype train isn't coming, so it's time to pause the 6 to 7 out of 10 game reviews and do story time, which has been which is a great time because seeing how this game is a bit of retelling of mythology, then this story will also be a bit of retelling of mythology, and that mythology is as follows. Because this story takes place in the ancient Vietnamese city of Hue, of course, the walled city that was part of the throne, the 19th century, the 18th century, 18th or 19th century throne of the kings and the monarchs of Vietnam. It's not about Vietnam, but it is about that walled. It's not actually about that. It's just about walled cities in general, and it's about people that live in those walled cities, and it's about a specific person that lives in that walled city, and that person was that person was named. That person was named. What was that person's name? Goodness gracious. It'll come to me in a second. But the fact that the walled cities are a difficult thing to talk about because when you talk about a walled city, you're going to be talking about one thing in particular, and that is how do we get how does the sanitation work, and where's all the effluents go at the end of the day? A lot of towns, a lot of cities up until I would say until the modern day have figured out fairly reasonable ways of getting rid of all of the waste that the human beings create on a daily basis. So that's the thing when you sit down or you point and you sit down at your point, or you kind of bent whenever you want to get serious and get the stuff out of your body that you no longer need anymore. That stuff has to go somewhere. And in the past, and not not too distant past, sometimes you just go out the front door, go right there, and someone who was coming to visit you would have to stay up and stay awake as they were going through your front door, and then step over it gets messy real quick. But luckily, in this particular walled city, they figured out very early on that the stuff needed to go outside of the walls in the city, and that place, unfortunately, was the place that they piped all the stuff to. Was an unfortunate place to go because it was a giant cave beneath the walled city, and that cave was filled with the angry souls of the dead. And one thing you definitely don't want to do when you're talking about the dead, angry souls of the dead, is you don't want to pour anything on them that makes them more upset, because, as we all know, people that are gone and people that are dead are extremely upset about it. It's life is extremely fascinating and endlessly interesting, and when you're gone, it just gets quite irritating, because you're seeing everybody kind of live these just wild and unpredictable lives. Gray Blob, first time chat, thanks for being with us tonight, and thank you for listening to the story time. Hype Train is now at 71% with a minute 30 to go, and I have yet to tell the story, which is about what happens when all of the waste and effluence of the walled city goes into the chamber of the angry dead, and the angry dead started to figure out how to reconstitute themselves with the waste and all the cellular and bacterial materials and all of the DNA that we were leaving, but that the people in the city were leaving behind, that they just started to be able to kind of create a chain reaction with all the energy that ghosts tend to have. And those ghosts, thank you, Joe Botnick, for keeping the hype train going and seeing where this story is going to lead us this evening. And the ghosts, the angry ghosts, who were already angry before they got dumped on, and that is a double meaning. They decided to become a form again, and that form became known as the essence. The essence is that's the enemy of the evening. That's the villain of the evening. And of course, a misunderstood villain, perfectly reasonable to be angry about having all of that happen to you. But the essence is people were starting to worry because the ground in the walled town was sinking, and at the center of the town was a child, a little boy. He wasn't a little boy. He was a fully grown man, and he was named Benki. And Benki, the fully grown man, was just having a tough time with his pipes. So he created a way to see down into the pipes, down into below the walled city, into the chamber of the dead, which of course we all know had become a sort of a receptacle, a cistern for all of everybody in the town's businesses. And Benki was able to see for the first time that the ghosts and all the waste were reconstituting itself as the essence. And Benki took this to the town's governor, and he said, because this is one of those things where like the governor is just like governor is just like a general term for the town's leaders. Later we called them mayors, but before they were mayors, they were governors. And the governor was just this extremely just hard ass fellow that would look at Benki when he would come in and talk about. He just like, what the hell are you talking about, Benki? Get the hell out of my office and come back when you've got something that's not ridiculous to talk about. But Benki kept checking his pipes with this. It was a long piece of glass with like a lot of refractive bits in it. It's sort of like, if you can imagine like a straw, but with like a thick straw about the size of this, and then inside of the straw there were all of these bits of glass, and it sort of like they stepped down into the tube, and then of course the straw was made out of leather, because otherwise you wouldn't have been able to get the tube down all the pipes, because there was curves and things like that. So it was a leather tube with little bits of glass so that he could see properly down into the chamber of the dead, which had become the town cistern if you're just joining us. And so one day he looks down into the chamber of the dead, and he sees what he thinks is just a giant pair of legs, and he gets upset, and he goes to the governor, and he says, Governor, Governor. He says, Mr. Governor, I can't remember your name right now, and I'm trying to remember as much as I can and give you as much information as important as possible, but I just looked down my pipe today like I've been telling you, and that thing down there, that thing that's been making all these groaning noises and keeping everybody awake at night, which is true, that had happened at the beginning of this whole episode. They had started to dump all their stuff down into the chambers and halls of the dead, and that had started to they ignored it for about 2 days, and then about on day 3 they started to notice that the town was kind of shaking a lot because this thing was starting to build up and up and up. It's sort of like when yeast rises and when you're making a nice bit of bread. And so Benki and everyone was called everybody's names rhymed. So there was Benki, Genki, which is unrelated to Dawn of the Samurai. Genki was the governor. So he said, Governor Genki, I've been looking down at this thing growing slowly as throughout this whole period, and you've been ignoring me, and it's time for you to take me seriously. So you come over to my house tonight, and this is the only way I know how to get your attention, because I know that you love to eat delicious sweets and snacks. So I'm going to make you the best meal that you've ever had. It's going to be lots of sweets, lots of desserts, a lot of things that are gonna wet your palates are gonna go nuts. You're gonna live in a kind of a, when you get to my house tonight, it's almost as if you're going to have you're gonna have a sensual experience with all the food that I'm gonna be making. And Mayor Genki, or Governor Genki, goes to Benki's house. So Benki and Genki are at the house, and Benki says, all right, do you want to eat first, or do you want to look down this pipe together with my crazy tube? And Genki says, I want to eat first. So Genki starts eating this wonderful thing that Benki had made with all of these ingredients, and he had just pulled everything. He had pulled the whole everything together. All the best ingredients, all the best like magical little spells and powders that you get from the nature woman that comes through the town every once in a while, that sells things that she's dug up and dead animals like that don't exist anymore. And those ingredients went into everything, and all of a sudden Governor Genki starts to have I don't me, and I don't like to make things. I don't like all the adult content, but unfortunately, when it comes to these kinds of stories, you have to tell them like it is. And Genki started to have what we would call he was finishing himself off simply by ingesting the food and enjoying the food as best he could. And when I say finishing himself off, he wasn't touching himself, he wasn't touching anybody else, no one was touching him. He simply by the act of eating these wonderful little muffins. They were like tiny little muffins, and they all had little bits of frosting on top of them. And he'd eat the little muffin, and his eyes would roll back in the back of his head, and then he would eat another muffin, and the eyes would roll back in the back of his head. And Pinky just said, he's like, I just thought I was making these muffins. And Genki says, believe me, buddy, you didn't just make muffins. You made something really special, and I ain't leaving until I get to the bottom of this thing, because I have a feeling that it's going to be a long night before I can even stand up again. And good old Benki figures out that if he brings over if he brings the two, he basically figures out while the Governor Genki is eating all of these delicious little muffins with the frosting and like the little faces in the frosting, when like a little happy face. He didn't expect that this was going to become a kind of sensual experience, of course. But the happy face is what what the governor says. Let's just call him Governor Mayor Genki. Governor Mayor Genki is basically having a 30 to 45 minute long orgasm, and that 30 to 45 minute long orgasm just keeps kind of like going on. It ends up going about 4 or 5 times longer than that, and I won't get into the details of what that would look like when you're talking about just a middle-aged man who's lived in the big house at the center of town, democratically elected. but not particularly well opposed when it comes time to the elections. You might say it was a bit of an autocracy. He was sort of a placeholder for the king, and we'll get to the king perhaps later. Genki was a placeholder for this old king, you see, and the old king was one of those just wild and crazy kings, lots of scimitars and harpoons, and he would go, the way the story was the old king was that he would go out into the middle of the ocean and he would harpoon the biggest sea monsters, and then he would bring them back, and the whole town would eat all these big sea monster feasts, and then they would throw all the bones into the chamber of the dead because the way that things went back then was that if you want to fight with a crazy wild animal, then you put it in the middle of your funeral home, or not your funeral home, but in the middle of your catacombs, because the supposedly was that, then because it was angry, dead people are so angry, but if they saw these these magnificent carcasses and these big bones, that they would just feel a little bit of a sense that life is certainly worth living, but maybe being dead isn't so bad, because at least we get to appreciate these big old bones. But what happened but the king didn't realize was that every time that all those big ass animals had souls, and those souls were much more angrier than the people's souls that were already angry, and therefore the people's souls started listening to the crazy animal souls, and those. And then they started feeding off of each other, and then the angry kind of spins up and spins up and spins up. And again, and in the midst of all these long conversations that go long into the night, in the midst of all these conversations, they would all the stuff from the town dropped in, and then that was the hype train story. I want to say, obviously the hype train story is over, but I wanted to say that the one thing that I wasn't able to get to, and I think it's important to just leave everybody with a bit of a factual information about the story, was that once Benki figured out that he could make his tube a little bit longer and reach the table where Governor Mayor Genki was sitting, then, and he did so in the midst of Governor Mayor Genki's thing, then it turned out that was like throwing a match into like a tank of gasoline, because all the Governor Mayor Genki's vocalizations, let's say, were then piped down into the chamber of the dead, and that's when the thing really came to life. So it's Benki is the man, is the full-grown man, and then Genki, which is not related to the game that we're going to be reviewing tonight. There's no oil. It wasn't an oil situation. I just want to say that. And also, everybody, I just want to point out one more thing, which is that back then, everyone was quite dry, and so there wasn't a lot of, we hadn't evolved necessarily as to the point where we are now, where we're all very sweaty and very oily. Back then, we were just very dry, like crumbly old bread. So thank you for the hype train, and if we get it going again, then we'll feel free to continue on to the story and how and what befell the town and what Benki had to do, because Benki was looking for purpose, and I think a lot of that's kind of like what I think the story of this evening's 6 to 7 out of 10 game review is about finding purpose. And in this game, it's called Genki, Dawn of the Samurai, which is unrelated to the story that I was telling. It just happened to be that was the name of the man in charge of the town. And, it wasn't... Wait, is there someone saying what's going on? Hold on for one moment. Okay, Genji, Dawn of the Samurai follows the adventure... Oh, Genki. Oh, Genji. See. Genji. Wait, is the hype train still going? Wait, there's another hype train? Wait a minute. What's happening? I'm not seeing that there's a hype train on my end. Is there a hype train? Generally, okay, so what's happening? I'm going to go just check on something right now. There's no hype train going. Everyone's just saying that there's a hype train going because they want to say that there's a hype train going, so they can get all the because everybody's everyone's got a dirty mind and they want to get all these dirty details in, and I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. You know, that's the agreement. The agreement is that I'll do it if I'm made to do it, but I'm not going to be doing it otherwise because I have to be talking about Genki. And I realize that Genji, John. Okay, so Genki is not the name of the game that we're talking about. Genji Dawn of the Samurai is the name. Genki is a different game, and I'm pretty sure Genki is a kind of a it's either a kind of a Japanese street racing game, or it's a kind of a mech combat game similar to Frame Grind. And Frame Grind is, of course, our if we haven't found any sponsors yet, so we're still looking for sponsors here on EGI2. If you've heard of anybody who's in charge of Frame Grind or mini PCs or copper wire or bitmap books, anything like that, just let me know and I'll get in touch with them and we'll you'll put little buttons all along the bottom row, like the lower third of the screen here, and then supposedly I think that's how it works, is that the buttons, and you can press all the buttons, and it's like a shopping situation, and everybody can come here and they can shop for Frame Grind, copper wire bitmap books, and Genji Dawn of the Samurai. Genji Dawn of the Samurai is, of course, a throwback, you might say. Not a throwback because it actually is the thing itself. During the period of PlayStation 2, at this time, we all know that God of War and games like God of War and Onimusha had become quite successful, and so there was a lot of people that were trying to make third-person hack and slash action games. If you think of games like Devil Kings or Chaos Legion or other third-person action slash 'em ups that we've talked about on EGI2, EGI Electronic Game Information, or EGI2 over the years. Well, this was just one of them. The story follows the adventures of Minamoto Yoshitsune as he descends from his mountain retreats and eventually embraces a quest to defeat the Taira clan, thereby avenging his father. Okay, so that's the story. That's part of the story. We'll talk more about the story later. And one of the reasons why I was a bit late to starting the stream tonight was because I was having issues with exporting the story, the documentation of the Genji Dawn of the Samurai story. So sorry about that. And I'm sorry to everybody who may have thought that I was being insensitive by constantly referring to Genji as Genki, because that was not my intention. It's just J and K are very close to each other, and I was and Benki sounded so much like Genki, and I was like, oh, and then I was thinking in the back of my mind Genji. So, but I didn't want to say Benji because I knew that was wrong and that wasn't the name of the character in the storyline. So everybody is, EGI2 says never started on time. That may be true, but we're working our way along to ultimate goal here is to keep the streams going and keep at some point in the not too distant future, start on time with all of the elements intact. I want to just show you guys that one of the things that I was doing at the last minute was making a new breaking news button. That hopefully the sound of the breaking news button is not quite as abrasive as it once was. I hope. Let's just see if I can see people's responses to that. Got to bake in the height. We can't. Big Plague says we got to bake in the height time, and I got to say that the hype. I'm not trying to like populate. I'm not trying to do anything untoward. I'm simply just someone who's not very good at what he's doing, and used to have a lot more money to pay friends to kind of help me out do the various things that I do, and now I don't have that no more. So, here we are. So breaking news button seems to be working well. Sound levels seem to be fine. People are happy about that. Hopefully, I really want to say thank you to Dominic from PA for sending that email a few days ago, which we read on EGI2 stream 11 as a joke, as if it was a poem, but it was in fact a suggestion about the sound, and that suggestion was taken to heart. And that sound and so the buttons that we're using tonight have all been, the volume has been changed. So we are 30 minutes into the show, and I have barely talked about Genji Dawn of the Samurai. Let's go ahead and take a look at the first. Let's take a look at the trailer for Genji Dawn of the Samurai, and let's dive. And then after that, we'll dive right into our review of the game.
Yesterday, I met him for the first time in years. He's changed.
Okay, give me 1 second. Not sure what happened there. Definitely feeling a little bit upset at this moment. But let's see if I could just pull up the actual trailer right now. All right. I'm very sorry. It's just been a tough day. Let's just double check that the other buttons are working well. This is the F button. Looks like the levels on my end are doing all right.
Oh,
The
no!
button, looking up there. Yep. No.
Oh.
That looks good. Let's just make sure that the slideshow is gonna. God. Good Lord. So if you're just joining us, this is EGI2's 6 to 7 out of 10 game reviews. 7, where we'll be reviewing Genji Dawn of the Samurai, but somehow in the process of making the Genji Dawn of the Samurai slideshow, there we go. There it is. Well, luckily we don't have. So let's take some calls and see how people are feeling about Genji Dawn of the Samurai. So whenever you guys feel like calling in, and if you've ever wanted to see a person just sort of slowly fall into darkness, then this is the night. This is Genji Dawn of the Samurai. Again, like I said, it's a call. Caller, you're on the air with EGI 2, 6 to 7 out of 10 game review, 7, Genji Daughter of the Samurai. How are you doing, and where are you, and what are you calling about? Caller? Hello? Caller? Are you there? All right. Caller, you're on the air with EGI 2, 6 to 7 out of 10 game reviews. Hello?
Hi. Hello? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Let's see if we can fix this. This is going great tonight, guys. We've fully and just a fully just a giant steaming just feel like my head is about to come off and leave my body right now. All right, so let's try. Hopefully. Hello? Hello?
Hi, hi, Robbie. Hello. It's Cape Cody. Yep. Still rocking. Still here. Still rocking in the free world. I still want to talk about Genji, Dawn of the Samurai. This is Cody with EGI 2, 6 to 7 out of 10 game reviews. Waiting for Robbie to come back on. If I had something to say about Genji, Dawn of the Samurai, I'd say when I first heard about it, I was under the impression that it was going to be like a pretty down-to-earth, a pretty base samurai simulation type experience. But then they start showing us the giant spiders and all sorts of onis, and I much prefer more down-to-earth
let's try this one more time. Thank you for your patience, everybody. I know this has been a rough evening so far, but we're trying to get to the Genji Dawn of the Samurai review on the PlayStation 2. It's nice to see everybody here to. Okay, and now the light stopped working, so that's great, and we're having a great time. I just want to check in with everybody and make sure that everyone's very interested in what's happening and are still just solidly just not. There's nowhere. If you need to go somewhere else, that's totally fine. I won't hold it against you. No one would hold you accountable for what's happening this evening to the streams. This is just everything that is supposed to work is not working currently. Let's try and see if we can get some of the voice calls to come through, and we'll see if we can. If somebody would like to review, talk to us about Genji Dawn of the Samurai before we run out of time, because I do think that we have a lot of things to talk about. Whether or not it's the controls, the graphics, or the... and now I'm not seeing... And I'm gonna try to call somebody back. We've never tried that before. Caller? Who is... Hello?
Hello? Hi,
Wait.
Can you hear me?
Who's this?
This is Aura from Savannah.
Why can't I? Everyone can hear you, but I can't hear you. I can hear you a tiny bit. So why don't you just give us your thoughts on Genji Dawn of the Samurai for the PlayStation 2 while I figure out what to do.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. I do also want to say that it was exciting because I actually got the call from you, and it showed up as EGI2 calling me, which was very exciting. As far as the game goes, there was a lot of flipping, a lot of swords. I may have seen a horse. I'm not sure. I was kind of half paying attention. But if so, all of these things come together to make a really excellent game. It was really exciting what I've seen so far.
Not now.
Yeah, so it was, to answer your chat, it was actually really exciting to see getting a personal call from Robbie and from the show. Also, I do have my dog right here who's very upset that I'm on the phone right now and not going to bed. So if you hear a dog crying in the background, then that may be what that is. All right. So let's see here. There's some kind of blue orbs and a lot of questionable lighting decisions. I will say hi to my dog. My dog's name is Mushroom. He is part lab and part something small. Let's see here. Yeah, this looks kind of like a nightmare. I don't feel like I would be able to navigate a level design like this. Mushroom says hi to everyone else. He is very good. He's just he's very strict on bedtime. When it's time for bed, it's time to go to bed, and he's not too happy that I'm not in bed right now on Mondays and Wednesdays. All right, it looks like, I'm assuming this is Genji. Genji just unbarred the door. I can't really make out Genji's face whenever he turns around. I don't feel happy about Genji killing a big mushroom. I do like mushrooms in general, so that's very hurtful to me. This very much does seem like a like Genji's got 2 candles so far. He was skipping through the dialogue, so I'm not sure what those do. But they're probably pretty important. Like, Genji's finding a lot of stuff right now. This does look like that one, like, forest maze in the original Zelda, where you had to figure out which direction to go through from, you know, left, right, up, or down. And I think Genji is just picking the... Oh, hold on. Something's happening. Whoa. Alright, this is going to up the score of the game. Because I was at a solid 4, but... Well, he did just leave, unfortunately. Good lord. These are some interesting character designs also. We've got guy with barrel on his back, guy holding barrel. It looks like Genji has 2 swords. Whoever's playing this has absolutely no idea where they're supposed to be going. It looks like a nightmare. Something to do with that one orange key that keeps coming up.
Caller, thank you so much for whatever it is that you said. When I was trying to fix the sound there, it seems to have accidentally hung up on you, but don't worry, because there's going to be plenty of chances in the next few minutes. If I don't fix this in the next 5 minutes, you guys, I don't know if it's going to happen tonight, because if I can't take calls and I can't hear people, then it's not gonna work. And so I'm really sorry, because this is just definitely not the most fun I've ever had in my life. I'm going to be completely honest with you. So who was that? I think it was. Yeah, guys. I am gonna just finish the story. Hype train or no? Let's. I guess we're putting Genji, Dawn of the Samurai, to the side for the evening, and we're gonna just talk about this this walled town and this definitely just a bad situation these people were in. So, I unfortunately, because I can't take any phone calls, I won't be asking again for any phone calls. But we have to do something with the time that we have left on this planet, and so let's just make it happen. And so, where did I leave off? Oh yeah, okay. So the thing that happened before before the hype train stopped, and before because we do have to just we have to say something about, again, thank you for joining us here on EGI2. If you're just joining us for the first time, we do have some gameplay footage that you can look at while I'm telling this story. And we do have, of course, we can do other things. Besides that, I can show the game review slideshow. We can try and do all sorts of things with the buttons that we have, but unfortunately, we'd have a great bit of story to get through. So, unfortunately for Governor Mayor Genki, the sounds that he was able, the vocalizations that he was making while he was eating the delicious food at Benki's house, were causing there to be a great deal of, let's say, it's almost as if encouraging the growth of this organism at the bottom of the walled city. And the reason that they had the walled city in the first place was not too undifferent. Is that the word I'm thinking of? It's not completely different than the situation that happens with the people in the walled cities of Attack on Titan. So of course the naked people that would come up on the I guess the town is called Titan. I'm not exactly sure how that works, but instead of just giant, they were clothed. That was the big difference. It was the same thing as Attack on Titan that this town had to go through. That's why they built the wall. But instead of the Titans being naked, the Titans wore clothes, and they all wore kind of like football uniforms, like kind of like very porous, kind of like big shirts with lots of padding and armor over top, and it was just every once in a while people that were standing guard at the walled city, they would have just to see these horrible creatures, because they're similar, like their mouths would open really wide, and then it would be they would chomp and people would die, and that was always an unfortunate thing to see people go down the gullets of these mighty beings. But again, they were clothed, and they weren't quite like I said, they were football uniforms, but they weren't quite football uniforms, because they were more like big muumuus. They just were kind of had the same texture as a football jersey or something like that, just like with a lot of little holes in it. And then all those holes had eyes, and that was an important detail that you can't leave out, because the muumuus themselves were also alive, and they had to they were the ones actually. So the way that the giants would work, the Titans in this story would work, was that they would eat human beings, and then the human beings would be digested, and then rather than having waste come out the way that you or I would, being human beings would the waste would go out one side or the other, and it would just seep out through the skin into the muumuu, and then the living muumuu would then, it's sort of like a not quite a parasite, because it wasn't doing anything bad to the giants, but it was excreting and bringing it back, and then also that would cause the muumuus, the living muumuus, which were just a giant, kind of like, again, if you're just joining us, it was kind of like a big long muumuu made out of football jersey material, but with all the little holes, had little eyes in it, and occasionally it was a little mouth too. And those little mouths would sing these incredible songs that everybody would want to hear from. Here's what. Just imagine that you're a guard standing watch in the evening, and it's on this tower. You're kind of on these parapets, on a tower, on a high wall, and you're looking out into the distance. You're looking out into the forest, and you see these things coming out of nowhere. And those things are these giant creatures that are just going to tear ass through your town if they get to you. But at the same time, they're quite such majestic animals that they kind of, and less because they didn't speak really. I mean, the mouths in the muumuus would have a song, but they didn't actually speak either. It was really a strange way. It couldn't communicate properly with them, and it was just a terrifying in several versions of the word terrifying. Where in one case you would have the the word terrifying is I'm scared, and then another, it's terrible, like a way that like a great leader could be terrible, not necessarily scary, but just like the power of these things. It was such a sight to behold, and it was so great for everybody. The whole town would kind of run up on top of the walls, and they would look out, and first like 10 minutes they would just be absolutely entranced at the sight of these things coming forward to tear them apart. But they would have at least another 30 minutes after that to really prepare, get all their giant harpoon guns and things like that. And those, we talked earlier about how the king who had disappeared used to bring all these big sea monsters back. Some of those sea monsters also had human heads. So I'm so happy that everybody's here, sticking with us tonight after the downfall of the 6 to 7 out of 10 game review for Genji: Dawn of the Samurai. But we do have the story of Genki, Benki, and then a little known, and then of course there was Genki, Benki, and Stinky. So Stinky was Benki's best friend, and Benki loved Stinky very much. And Stinky would oftentimes come over and leave little drawings of the two of them together, or he would leave various spices for Benki to cook into delicious snacks that then he would then feed to people like Governor Mayor Genki, who would fall into, and it wasn't just, I'm just trying to tell everybody that it wasn't just Governor Mayor Genki that had orgasms when they ate Benki's food. In fact, it was everybody. And that's an important detail going forward. So everybody's got to keep that in the back of their minds. I'm going to take quite a look at the Joe Botnick says Stinky, and actually it's not spelled S-T-I-N-K-Y, it's spelled S-T-E-N-K-I-E, so Stanky, or Stanky. So Stanky, Benki, and Genki are three characters' names in this story, and everybody's names in the town rhyme with those three names. So, and we will see if we can get to some of them later. But the first thing that I want to say is, so the governor's having his bit of a business, and that's gone. That the sound of that has gone down into the tubes, down into into the chambers of the dead, where the ghosts and the thing and the essence is growing and coagulating and becoming a form, and becoming kind of like an embryo, and inside of the embryo there's another organism growing, and that organism that organism was like a what was that organism like? It's kind of like well, I don't want to say it. I don't know if I should, because it's definitely it's gonna bring up a lot of things that we also have to okay, fine, I'll say it was a fully formed male organ with hands, with arms and hands, but no legs and feet, for the full and down the full length of the thing. I can't unsay it. I didn't want to have to say it. In fact, I wasn't planning on it tonight because I didn't think that we were actually going to have to tell the whole story. But it's not a log, Joe Botnick. It is not. This is absolutely not a log. I'm not going to say what it was ever again. I think we all know that there was something crazy down there. Look, this is how it all works. Is that back in the period of time in which this kind of stuff was happening on a regular basis, a lot of times the lines between just straight up violence and sexual content was crossed constantly. And this is what had happened with the Benki, Genki, and Stanky, and also Danky in their town. So I want to look at the chat and see what everybody says, that they think that I've crossed some kind of a line, or that I've diluted something about the EGI2. We were supposed to do the whole Genji Dawn of the Samurai review tonight, but I can't do it because of all the buttons are not working. So unfortunately, we're just going to have to sit here like adults and listen to a morality tale from a long, long time ago. And we're not going to, but I'm not going to spend the rest of my energy trying to censor it, because one of the things I think that we have to, if we're going to learn anything from this story, then we absolutely have to appreciate the details of how things worked back then, and not try to pretend as if there was a sugar candy coated Disney Plus version of the story. This is absolutely at the core of my being, there is a truth teller, and that truth teller is going to finish this story as the story was communicated to me through the various storytellers that told me the story. And therefore, so this giant, let's just call it the essence. The essence, of course, we all know what the essence was at this point. So that the essence begins its growing as into, because it starts very small. It's the same shape I just explained, with the arms and hands for legs. And with but here's the thing. And when I said it was a male organ, what I didn't get to say is that it wasn't like a person's. Okay? It was one of those weird ones that if you saw it, it wouldn't even look. I'm telling you, you wouldn't even know what it was. Yeah. It just looked like a rubber band with just some some maybe suggestive ridges in it. And but had human arms and human hands as the way it would move around, and the way it would start to once it was awake. And it was starting to grow very, very fast. I mean, we're talking growth from a tiny little nickel-sized thing into a full-grown wild monster that's just banging on the roof of the halls of the dead. Then that thing, that whole transformation took about 20 minutes. So, and once it was fully grown, it was starting to realize that it was stuck where it was. It wanted to get out, and it saw the first thing that it saw were the little bits of light that were coming down the pipe from Benki's leather tube with all the glass, the little glass refractors inside of the tube. And so it says, okay, that's where I'm gonna go. And luckily for it also didn't have any bones. Like, even though of course I said hands and arms, human hands and arms, they were almost like just full of air. Like, they would harden up when the air would go inside, but then it would be able to kind of expel all the air like a fart, and then it would shoot up, and then it shot up through the tube and then out the tube, and it was a sad thing, because in the middle of the sort of the final rise in Governor Mayor Benki's life, the rise, the thing that was happening to him, the enjoyment that he was having from eating all the delicious magical food, that Genki was the one who was overwhelmed, and he was gasping for air because he was just in such a trance of enjoyment, and then the thing shot into his nose, and then it blew up his head. So that was and the head exploded, and then Benki was like, oh. Now I guess, well, first things first, let's clean this up, and second. First, and this is just the kind of guy that Benki was. He said, I'm going to clean this up first, and then later I'll deal with the creature. But by the time he had finished cleaning up, which took about, I would say 15 to 20 minutes. A lot of things take 15 to 20 minutes if you think about it. Took about 15 to 20 minutes to clean everything up, and by that time the thing had slithered out, covered in the governor mayor's head, and gone out into the wilderness where it started to eat trees. That was like I said, there was already a bit of a flat plane from the wall to the forest, because you wanted to have a bit of a area when the giants with the moo-moos came out of the forest crashing towards the town to eat and to destroy. Then you would always have you would need to have like a wide sort of like a plane where you could see everything, and the essence just shot out into the forest and started eating all these trees. So the plane got longer and longer, and the guards were just absolutely the guards on top of the wall. I feel like I'm gonna, you know what? I think we're getting a little bit away from the actual. as the essence is chomping down all these trees and growing even larger, I think we're actually losing the essence of the story, which is about Benki. So let's go back about 15 years, and Benki, 15 to 20 years. Of course, people lived a lot longer back then, so 15 to 20 years would be closer to 2 or 3 years in our age and time. So back 2 or 3 years ago, Benki was just about 15 to 20 years ago. Benki was just a good-looking guy out looking for a wife. So Benki was and he was like, I got to get good at something. So I'm gonna and he says to himself, I'm not the best carpenter in the world. I'm not the most muscular man in the world. I know I can't draw. I can't write. So he decides to become a really good cook. And he learns as much as he can in the walled city. And the walled city's name is, what is the walled city's name? Roms. The walled city was called Roms, and that's Roms, R-A, if you want to write it down, it's R-A-H-M-S, Roms. So the walled city of Roms was starting to feel a little bit too small for good old Benki, and so he decides to go and live out in the wilderness, and get really good at picking up herbs and spices and various herbs and spices and little minerals. It's kind of like if you think about a long time ago when people used to put lead in their food, they would have like a little bit of a powdered lead, and they would drop lead in their food. Well, that was because back in those days we used to just walk around and we saw a rock that maybe had like a weird little like shiny ridge in it, and we'd scrape it off and put it in some water or put it on a hamburger, and then we would all take a bite of it, and they would say, that I guess that does something. What little do we know about lead was that it was going to cause so much problems, and you don't need to look much farther than what happened to the people of the HMS Terror and Erebus to know what too much lead over a long course of your life can do to the human mind. But that wasn't Benki's fate. He was hardy stock. He was a good-looking guy, like I said, on the look for a wife, and he was wanting to become the best cook in the land. So he goes out into the wilderness, and he finds the nature lady. And the nature lady, her name was she didn't have a name. The nature lady was just the nature lady, and we all know about nature ladies. They have houses made of mud and sticks, and maybe they'll have some like oiled paper or just maybe they figured out how glass works back then. I'm not really sure, but those folks were having the nature lady folks were having a bit of a dispute as a community, and so they had expelled, and because your nature ladies are not supposed to teach their cooking skills to new guys. So she wasn't in that circle no more. So when she saw this new guy come through down the path from the town of the walled city of Roms, then he says, my whole life I've listened to what other people tell me I can and can't do, and they says I can't tell anyone the secrets of how to make a really good meal that will send people into having orgasms, and so I will do that to this person right now. And she did, and over the course of several years they became great friends. They never did anything else. I want to just point that out there. The nature lady and Benki were just having a very, very they were, if anything, she wasn't into his kind of a thing, and he wasn't into her kind of a thing. And that even though he was looking for a wife, that was more because he was looking for it was more of a status thing in the walled city of Roms, and so he was kind of just into everything, except for the nature lady, because he saw her, because he respected her so much as a person. And I think what you could refer to it as is a kind of a queer platonic relationship. So they lived together and enjoyed each other's company and had great meals together, and if anybody got too crazy, they would have to just go. They would kind of go out. If anybody ate something and they felt a little bit too crazy, they were, the level of respect that they had for one another was such that that person would just take a short walk, be outside, enjoy the texture of the air and maybe lean up against a tree for as long as they needed, and then they would come back and they would finish the conversation or finish the kind of a meal, and that was they were perfectly happy in that way. And it was always a joy if when other people would stop by the house, they would say, your wife is so nice, your husband is so nice, and they would say, well, we don't use those terms, we don't feel like we need to be boxed in by those terms, we're just two people, one person that's been excised from her community, and one feller that's been just on the hunt for just a new way of thinking about how his life can go. And when he's done here, he's going to head back to the walled city of Roms, and he's going to teach, and he's going to not teach, but he's going to teach. He's going to teach people how to have a good meal and how to sit and enjoy things. And this was before cell phones, and this was before we all sat around, at tables together, looking at our cell phones and saying like, oh, I just read this on the Reuters app, or I just checked this out on the BBC radio, or what. My Vanguard, my Roth IRA just accumulated another $5,000 over the last week, but I can't touch it until I turn 72, because I made that promise to myself that I would let this accrue for as long as possible. So Nature Lady and Banky eventually decided that they were going to go on a vacation, and so because they were feeling like a lot of people were stopping by their house, because I want to say that the Nature Lady's house was on a well-traveled highway, so a lot of foot traffic coming through, a lot of people just stopping by, checking on. They would smell something crazy that would immediately make bits and make. I mean, the stuff that Nature Lady was teaching Banky to cook. If you ate it, it would send you out. But if you just smelled it, it would definitely just make you like it would kind of blow a very enjoyable breeze on you, let's just say. I'm not saying that anybody felt people weren't coming to the door, banging on the door, demanding, favors, but the smell was strong. So yeah, kind of like ASMR, Masilam. Thank you for that. Like a tropic breeze, but if a tropic breeze was also like a bunch of like really long fingers that kind of like went through your hair and in your armpits. Anyway, the Nature Lady and Banky decided to go, and Banky says, we all have all these great recipes that we've worked on together. I've learned from you, and I think that you maybe have taken a little bit of, you've taken suggestions from me, and sometimes they work out. Mostly they don't, but I think that we can say that we've encouraged each other to grow as people, and now it's a great time to go on a vacation together. So they did that, and they went to the ocean side town of they went to the seaside town of Cursed Mountain. So Cursed Mountain was the seaside town that everybody would go to for vacation, despite the name. The name was sort of a misnomer. I guess misnomer, is that the right kind of term for it? Because they didn't want the town to get too overwhelmed with tourists from all these different other places. So they called it a weird name that would kind of keep people, the people that knew Cursed Mountain knew that it was a great place to go and get some sea breeze and all that kind of thing. And if they didn't know what Cursed Mountain was and they saw Cursed Mountain in like a brochure, they did have brochures back then. I want to say that right there, because even though they didn't have printing presses, and even though they didn't have copying machines, people still made little brochures, and sometimes they would have like in a hotel, like when you go to where the bathrooms in the lobby are, and you see that big kind of a sandwich, like not a sandwich board, but like a shelf with like all of these brochures for things like the Rock City and Ruby Falls and various other places that attract people. And if you want to rent a kite, or if you want to do some whitewater rafting, that's where you go. And they had those back then too. And the reason that we have those now is because back then they had them too, but they were all handwritten, and there would be all the ones that you would want to see, like you'd be like a town that was called like happy sunny. It'd be called like sunny happy. Be called like sunny happy, sweet sunny happy, sweet sunny happy o'clock. Sweet Sunny Happyton, and most of them would have, the brochures would have names like that. But every once in a while, you would just see one that would say like Curse Mountain, or like Skull Hill, or Dead Fingers Bog, and if you were in the know, then you would know that those were the places that you should check out. And Curse Mountain on the coast was on a mountain, and the mountain was cursed, but it was cursed. It was only cursed at the very tip of the mountain. I think that we might call that the peak. So the peak of the mountain was cursed, but the rest of the mountain was fine. And that's where people built these beautiful houses, very ornate, gabled roofs, and lots of great woodwork woodwork at the top, stonework at the bottom, I think is what they would have said. So the woodwork and the stonework was great to see, and it was always wonderful to appreciate how much work went into building these things, and all the houses were on Curse Mountain were facing the ocean and they would all have these big picture windows where people could just sit and look out and appreciate the ocean for what it was. Of course, the ocean, like I had mentioned about an hour ago, was teeming with these giant monsters. So you would be able to appreciate ocean breeze, and maybe they would have these walled off little swimming areas so people could paddle around and get their feet wet and get some salt water in their hair. But ultimately, if you were to go out much farther than that, the chances of you being consumed by some sort of insane wild animal, that would be the size of a minivan or bigger. Sometimes they were segmented. Like if you can imagine 7 or 8 of these kind of segmented minivan creatures. Yeah, so you wouldn't want to swim out past the dedicated swimming areas in Curse Mountain. But it was, again, a nice place to go, and Genki and Nature Lady decided to rent some rooms. Again, being in the queer platonic relationship that they were in, they decided to share a room, but get 2 separate beds, and they would sleep holding hands, which was really nice. They would say when it was time to go to bed, they would always if at the Nature Lady's house, they slept in a big bed, and they slept together and holding hands. But in the place that they rented on Curse Mountain, they had separate beds, but they still managed to hold hands. They would say good night, Banky, and then Banky would say good night, Nature Lady, and then they would say at the same time, because they really had it all together. They really had their communication down. They would say at the same time, "Do you want to hold hands?" And then they would. And they would fall asleep, and they would go to the dreamland, which, of course, was a place where they had full control over their dreams. So they could do all sorts of wild stuff, and they could explore their various kinks, on their own and separate. And they would check in back every once in a while, because they would sleep for 8 to 10 hours most nights. And they would, during these kind of during these dreams where they were in full control of whatever they wanted to do, they would also be, they would finish up one situation, and they would come back and just check in on the other person to make sure that they were being safe and also being thoughtful. And but of course, and that was just the kind of they were not each other's foils, they were each other's not each other's foils, they were each other's shoulders. Again, I want to just point out that these are 2 people that have been living together for a very long time in a magical house that was built out of mud and bricks and stones that were also, but also, you know, the roof of the. I didn't talk about the roof of the house, which was, of course, 3 or 4 of these giant birds. So they went to the Cursed Mountain. They got it. They unpacked. They head down to the shore. They met some folks that were also. There was a lot of the Cursed Mountain was just a lot of sort of like if you can imagine probably what we know about Fire Island, but just all but everyone was like fully nobody was there. But no one was there to hook up. Does that make sense? And it was just everybody. It was kind of like if you came to the Cursed Mountain, you were basically signing an invisible contract that you weren't going to try to do anything nuts. Get it? So this is, if you're just joining us, this is EGI 2's 6 to 7 out of 10 game reviews. And this is a show. This is separate from the mainstream show where we do. We have a talk show where we talk about game news and we have just great conversations with each other. This is a game review show that is separate from that. But if you're just joining us, all the buttons that make the show into a game review show that work, and also a number of other things, aren't working. So instead, we're telling a story about. A man named Benki and his queer platonic partner, Nature Lady. And every once in a while, I'm gonna just put this. This is fun because I can now that we're all kind of on the same page, I think I can very comfortably say that this is not actually Genji Dawn of the Samurai footage, which was what I was supposed to be reviewing tonight. It's actually footage from the 4th Onimusha game. I thought that would fun. And also, even though it says to call, don't bother calling because what was one of the things that the calls don't work no more. So gonna have to troubleshoot that at a later time. But very happy to be still checking in on Benki and Nature Lady at their oceanside retreat on Cursed Mountain, the queer platonic resort for couples and thruples and every other iterative type of that relationship up until I don't know quadruple quintuple. Anyway, so they went out to the beach. They met some great people. They had a great time, and you know they met this one guy, and everybody was kind of like, you know, he walked onto the beach, and everybody knew that he was gonna be kind of like a issue because he had these bright, burning red eyes, and was clothed entirely in very tight black onyx armor. With lots of spikes on it and a very, very, very obvious cod piece. He was like, he came up to Benki and Nature Lady and some of the folks that they were talking to and says, "This is a nice town. I'm having a good time, but I'm looking to make some trouble. Do you guys know how I can get into a lot of trouble?" And Benki and Nature Lady shake their heads and say, No. This is not a troubled town. This is Cursed Mountain. This is where people that don't want to get into any of that kind of trouble go to just be with one another and have conversations about books and spices and the properties of certain stones. And occasionally we'll just paint pictures of each other and leave them on walls. So if you're into that kind of thing, you can hang out with us. But if you're looking to cause some other kind of trouble, then you should look somewhere else because that's just not the kind of person that is supposed to be hanging out in Cursed Mountain. And of course, this guy also, I should say, has a pet snake wrapped around his neck, so as if to telegraph, like, I'm like the devil. So and we'll just call it as it is. It was the devil, and the devil had come to Curse Mountain, and it was never going to be the same again. But Benki and Kanky, Benki and Nature Lady, Kanky wasn't there. Kanky was back in Rom's, the walled city. Benki and Nature Lady go back to their room later that night, and they say that was a really unnerving interaction that we just had with that fella with all that armor on, and the blinding red eyes and the snake necktie. What do you think was up with him? Benki says, I heard stories a long time ago. I would say like 50 or 60 years ago when I was a toddler. And I remember people saying that there would be a man that would show up in the middle of very, very calm situations in terms of when people were really communicating well. And he would just kind of like ooze all this horny energy and make people really No. EGI2 watcher, Benki and the Nature Woman don't have sex. They're in a queer platonic relationship. That's not their thing. Not that they're not necessarily asexual. They just don't do anything with each other. That's the type of relationship that they have. They're very respectful of what each other are into, where their boundaries are, and of course all that. And except now there's like a toxic exactly. Someone said he's a toxic horny guy. And that was who the devil. That's the devil. That's just what the devil does, and what the devil has always done from the point when the cosmos spit out the planet Earth, and he's still doing it today, if you ask me. So, what was I saying? So it says, what and he said, well, so Benki and Nature Lady are just having a nice sit. They're going over some recipes that they're thinking about cooking for their new friends, but they brought all of their recipe books with them because they don't want to leave them back in the hut, because the 3 or 4 birds that make up the roof of the hut are also robbers. They're called robber birds, and they will steal books and fly them away, and then people that shouldn't have those books would have those books. So they have to bring the books with them when they go on vacation, and that's a pretty important detail. So they have the regular. So they have the books that make the cooking that makes everybody go crazy, but then they also have normal books. So they're looking through their normal books to just see what they can make for all their new friends that they met just here on their vacation, and they're flipping there like, oh, here's some hummus, here's some this is like a nice white bean hummus, and here's like some honey crisps. So we can make some honey crisps for people. People love honey. Everybody likes honey in the past, isn't it? I always think that's interesting. And then while they're going through all this stuff, Benki kind of knocks the other pile of books, and that's the books with all the forbidden, the crazy knowledge in it. The books that the stuff that make like the muffins that I was talking about earlier. There's definitely the muffins were in that book, and then there was also like scones that were similar, like scones that did a similar thing, and he accidentally knocks the book with his elbow, and it opens up to the scones page. And I think you could probably guess what's gonna happen next, because it opens the scones page, it falls, and he says, I'll just pick that up when I'm getting ready when we're tidying up later. But what they don't know is that the devil, in this crazy armor, he looks like Daedric Lord from like Oblivion. He is just stuck to the ceiling, looking down at them. And he's and looking down at the recipe for the scones, and he memorizes it, and then he poof, like in sulfur, like a little black sulfur cloud, and then he goes to his house that he rented in Curse Mountain, which has got like a big ass kitchen, and he starts making those scones, and next morning when they bring their bean dips and their honey crisps back to the beach to meet their new friends, people are doing all sorts of troubling things, is what I'm trying to say. I'm not going to go into detail of the kinds of things they saw, but everybody that was there for simple conversation and discussion and just simple intellectual stimulation. They ain't looking for intellectual stimulation no more. And the devil put the scones out there, and everybody was just going so hard they were like dying. So, Hall of Head says, "Hi, Roddy. Hi to you. Let's just take a. Crapmaster Zach says it's Robbie Christian, and I'll say leave it to the judge. But I want to say also that when we're talking about these scones, we're talking about these people that are. I mean, I'm saying like it was more like 14 hours from when Nature Lady and Benke had gone to sleep, and when they woke up, that was like they had like a 15-hour sleep, and they went to their little like fully controlled dreamland, and they did all their crazy stuff, and so when they woke up, they were already tired, and then they walked to the beach. They're like, we'll get in the water. The water's nice and cold. It'll wake us up. And Nugmaster says Devil seems like a feet guy, and honestly, this isn't. I don't think the devil's. I think the devil's kind of into everything, and I don't think that there's any limits to the kind of weird stuff he can get into. I wouldn't if I were to. Let me tell you something, and this is just me, and I want to say, if I saw a guy with bright burning red eyes and a giant onyx suit of armor like a Daedric Lord from Oblivion. I think there's a difference between, and I'm going to say, there's a difference between healthy kink, I think we can all say, and just generally too much behavior. Like, tire somebody out, tire everybody out. Joe Bodnick wants to know who's my favorite Daedric prince. I don't think I have I love them all. The thing so the scones have created a big issue, and everybody's just lying down all over the place, making a mess of this very quiet, very place that people come for study and reflection and just general platonic merrymaking. And all of a sudden, it's Sin City, and the devil is responsible. And the scones, and Benke and the Nature Lady get to the beach, and they see all the scones, and they say, "What the hell happened? Somebody's been making all of our scones recipes, and now things are now this relaxing vacation ain't relaxing no more." Sin City Hall of Heads. Sin, like S-I-N, or Sin and Punishment on the Nintendo 64. So, if you're just joining us, this is EGI2's 6 to 7 out of 10 game reviews. This is a game review show where we review games that mostly have released between 2002 and 2011 and give them a score from 6 to 7 out of 10. And various decimal points that you can find there, and it's a family show. It's a great place to see games that you may have not heard of, or maybe you forgot. Usually we step through all these different aspects of the game, and we show trailers and game footage like this. But unfortunately, because of some technical issues, we aren't doing that. So I am telling a very long story about a guy named Benke who came from a town called Roms, a walled city called Roms. And in the beginning of the story, we were actually dealing with Benke's life later on, when he had to deal with this thing called the Essence, which was basically a very weird-looking male organ that had the ability to inflate arms and with hands at the end of them, like a centipede, with human arms and hands. But then it could also deflate everything really fast, so it could fit through pipes. And it fit through pipes, and it blew up the head of the mayor of the town, whose name was Genki. And the game that we were going to review tonight was called Genji: Dawn of the Samurai. And so that was one of the reasons why that's unrelated, but the point is that once the scones situation had become apparent to them, they were like, well, first things first, we need to figure out how to get all of these people off of each other as quickly as possible. And the second thing we need to do is we need to kill the devil. So it's time to kill the devil, and it's time for but it's time to cook. And when I say and this is one of the things that really this is the reason that Banky and the Nature Lady had become such close friends and had become such close partners and their life partners. Again, platonic life partners. It's because they just both enjoyed cooking so much, and they says, Nature Lady says, Banky, how do we? What do you think? This ball's in your court because I'm so turned over by because I've been coming to Cursed Mountain for my entire life, as far as I know. Even when I was back with the community of people of nature ladies that I used to live with that kicked me out because I had a gun, that they we used to come here all the time and do all sorts of various activities. We'd play. They would play like a kick. There was like something like kickball that they would play on the beach, and we would play kickball. And this is just a joyous place for me. It's always been a home away from home for me and everybody that I've ever been friends with. And now it's a home for you and me away from our nature house, where again the roof of the nature house. The house was made of mud, stick, and stones, but the roofs were made of 3 or 4 of these giant birds called robber birds, which is why they had to bring all of their really important paperwork and recipes from the house to the coast, because the robber birds would steal all. And it turns out the robber birds would have just given the books to the devil anyway. So I guess it's sort of an irony that the devil got to it because he came to Cursed Mountain. Oh, yeah. Crapmaster Zach, what does that have to do with... Genki is the governor-mayor of the town. Oh, and then there's Stanky. And he's... Stanky's... I don't think Stanky had been born yet. So, Nature Lady is so upset because she's seen all these wonderful things fall apart, this place that she loves so much. And it's a tragedy for her, and she can't get her head out of the gloom that she's in. She says to Banky, what's the quickest way that we have a recipe. We do have a recipe for a antidote to these scones. But I don't think we're going to be able to get these people off of each other for long enough to give them the antidote. So Banky comes up with an idea that actually this is what we're going to... He says this to Nature Lady. First, they hold hands. They hold hands and they look into each other's eyes, because this is just such a disappointment. What a terrible way to end a vacation. But to have to do all this cooking of antidotes and killing devils and whatnot. So Banky says, I have an idea and I think it's going to work, but it's going to require us making a bit of a journey to meet a giant who lives at the top of Cursed Mountain. And remember what I said earlier. Cursed Mountain, most of the mountain was fine. It was just the top that was cursed. And at the top, there was a giant. And the giant had a giant pot. Or I guess you call it a cauldron. He had a giant cauldron, and it was huge. I mean, it's just like the biggest cauldron you've ever seen. Do you ever see pictures of that big? Remember that big satellite dish in Puerto Rico that fell apart a couple years back? I mean, that's the size of this cauldron. I mean, it's big and it's deep. And he says, I think what we got to do is we got to talk to that giant atop Cursed Mountain and get him to. What we're gonna do is we're gonna make a lot of soup. I mean, the most soup that we've ever made, and we're gonna get that giant to boil the soup so hot that it becomes clouds and it rains down on Cursed Mountain. So he does. So they start to break. The first thing they got to do is they got to go talk to the giant. So they do that. They take the steps up to the top of the mountain, and the giant's there. And that giant looks, I mean, he's just one of the most awful looking things you could ever imagine. I mean, just all sorts of weird, I mean, he stinks. He's not been washed for a long time. He's just he's just got a terrible personality. I would go so far as to say he's like borderline personality disorder up there. And he's just rejected. He's just caused everybody that's ever cared about him to leave. Because he has not had the proper, people have borderline personality disorder, and it's a tough diagnosis. But if you work through it, you can have a good life. But this giant, he just didn't have that. He didn't have those types of resources. He didn't have that kind of support. So when they went up to him, he was just being a real son of a bitch to Benki and the Nature Lady. And the first thing that Nature Lady notices about the giant is that he's not been washed for a long time. And so she says, "How about this? If you let us scrub you down. I mean, like really give you the best wash you've ever had. And then you got to let us use their cauldron to cook all this soup." And the giant says, "I'll tell you two things right now. One, if you wash me down, I'll not only, I know I smell bad. I mean, I've been up here for a long time. I know that I've not had time to take care of myself, and I know that I've just been a very difficult person to deal with, and so nobody's been scrubbing me. And if you scrub me down, then I'm going to not only let you use the cauldron, I'm going to help you make the soup. And I know how to, and because one of my powers is that I can vomit up clear hot water. Like perfectly crystal clear, very hot water, perfect for soup. Good. So they lie the giant down atop Cursed Mountain, and they just give him a good sponge bath. I mean, just like a good scrubbing, and like a salt scrub and a sponge bath. And everybody is just being and they're getting into all these crevices, and they're finding all these weird bits of moss and like weird bacterias and the giant's just laying back, being very, very quiet while they clean them off. They got they're just having to dump buckets down the backside of the mountain, and which is an unfortunate thing because, like what I've said before. And this doesn't crop up in this story, but in various sort of, let's say, in various parts of this whole pantheon, the Hall of the Dead thing crops up a lot because people. So basically, what I'm trying to say is there was another Hall of the Dead, Chamber of the Dead, and that was on the backside of Cursed Mountain, which is kind of like why it was cursed to begin with. And they were just putting all the dirty stuff that they scrubbed off the giant, and they like poured it down this backside of the mountain and just flooded into the chamber and Hall of the Dead, which kind of created a whole other problem later on for some of the people. But Benki and Nature Lady scrub the giant down. He quietly just takes it all, and he sits up and he says, "Do you know how long it's been since anybody touched me? I mean, not just not a sex thing, but just touched me with anything other than just to unconditionally just touch, contact." If Allan Resnick is just joining us, Allan, the problem is that none of the buttons work tonight, none of the phone calls work tonight, and so I was unable to actually get to the 6 to 7 out of 10 game reviews, which of course was Genji Dawn of the Samurai, and then I was going to play this whole long joke where I was going to be talking about Genji Dawn of the Samurai, but instead I was just showing Onimusha gone of dreams. But because all the buttons didn't work, I had to stop everything and just figure out what to do with the time that I have. And so I just started telling the story that I had started with the hype train, just because I think people wanted to watch a show, and so I'm trying to give them a show. Allan, back to you, Allan. Anyway, so the giant just weeps, and again he's weeping tears, and it's just like the hot water that he would spit out of his mouth, but it's also coming out as tears. So he starts crying, tears of joy, but also vomiting hot water into the cauldron, and it's boiling hot stuff, and Benki and Nature Lady just start throwing in everything that they've got. They've got all the herbs they've got. They even throw some extra stuff in there, and it's just getting. And the giant is just so overwhelmed with just the compassion that they've shown him by washing him so well, that the water is even higher than it ever was before. And immediately the water starts to the water becomes soup. The hot water becomes soup first, and then it starts to evaporate into the atmosphere, and that is how the cloud is. This crazy cloud is formed, and the cloud's got all the soup in it, which is the antidote for the scones, and it starts raining down on the rest of Cursed Mountain. Allan Resnick is saying he wants me to recap the story, which is so there's two things that have happened in the story. First, we did one of those things where we kind of start with the end, and that was when Benki is slightly older, about 15 to 20 years older than he is in this part of the story, and he is asked he realizes that there's a creature that's living in the halls of the dead underneath the walled city of Roms, and that he and to get the attention of the leader of the town, Governor Mayor Genki. And again, this is Genki is not Genji, Dawn of the Samurai. It's Genki, like this. I think it's like an old Dreamcast game or something like that. But he feeds the governor mayor a bunch of sexy muffins, and that causes the mayor to gasp in delight for a very long periods of time. And while the governor mayor is doing that, Benki shows him the pipe, the tube that he made out of leather that's got all this glass in it, so you can see down the tube into the halls and chambers of the dead below, where the essence is growing. And the essence is a combination of all of the ghosts, the angry ghosts of the town, and also all of the waste, because people have been throwing all the pipes, all the people's bathrooms are basically, they didn't have flushing back then, but everybody's stuff is dropping down into this chamber, mixing with all the angry ghosts and creating this creature called the essence, which is essentially like a long deflated dog penis, and with human arms and hands for legs, like a centipede, but that can also blow out all of the air in it because it doesn't have bones to go up the pipe, and then it blows the real story. The story kind of like the beginning of the story climaxes with the mayor in his state of being, in his heightened state. His head's he basically has like the biggest, craziest orgasm of his life, and his head explodes. And then I talked a little bit about how there are these giants that came up out of the distant, the sort of like the far off distance outside of the walled city of Rom. So those giants were kind of like the giants in Attack on Titan, but instead of being naked, they had these big muumuus on, which kind of looked like football jerseys, but instead of football jerseys, they were muumuus, and all the little holes like you would see in a football jersey were actually eyes and occasionally mouths. And then there was a symbiotic relationship between the muumuus and the giants. So hopefully that gives you some context, Allan, as we go forward, because the cloud is it's raining down on top of Cursed Mountain, and everybody that ate all these great scones. This isn't a logs. This isn't a log spit. This is just a morality story. Getting to the moral right now, because everybody's getting dripped on by this crazy soup, that's coming from the sky, and they just like get up off each other, and they're like, holy moly, what the heck just happened? I came to this town, Cursed Mountain, for nothing but platonic intellectual discussions and meeting new people, but not doing anything with them. And here I am doing more than what I bargained for by far. And everyone got so angry, and they says, well, who gave us those scones? And they says, hey, it was that guy with the bright red eyes and the onyx armor with all the spikes on it and the big cod piece. I'm pretty sure everybody's like, pretty sure that's the devil. So they go, and luckily, whenever anybody rents a house in this town, they have to sign. They sign a big registry at the town's gates. So the big, all these people that have just woke up from this sex nightmare they go up to the registry, and they look through it, and it's like, it says it right here, devil rented townhouse, because he just puts the name. He's like, I'm the devil. I'm gonna do whatever I want. I'm gonna make everybody go. I'm gonna make everybody bake each other's bread, if you know what I mean. It's devil talk. And so they figure out what bungalow he's in, and they go up there, and they tear him apart, and they scatter his limbs in the various far corners of their world, and they eat the intestines, because that's something that people, of course, did a long time ago. Is that you don't waste anything; you got to eat every part of it. So they eat all of the, and the intestines. I want to say like they're chewing on each other's on the devil's intestines. They're making like, sausages and things like that. They're just using the skin from the intestines as the skin of like a good hot dog or something like that. And there's nothing. The devil doesn't really eat anything. So even though he's got all the human body parts that you or I would have. In most cases, he doesn't have, because he hasn't eaten anything, the intestines are like fully clean, so they don't even have to really wash it that much, Joe Botnick. It's a fully clean digestive system, which is an odd thing to think about. And they scatter his, and everyone's happy, and everybody puts Benki and Nature Lady onto their shoulders. And they have a great big, beach party, and they all, are kicking sand around, and everybody's building sand castles or big heads that look like Benki and Nature Lady, and they're so thankful, and everyone's giving each other hugs and holding each other's hands and supporting each other in any way that they can, until they finish, of course, disposing of the devil's completely obliterated body. And they give the body parts to they give the body parts to a bunch of like traveling mercenaries, and the mercenaries say that, oh yeah, we're gonna take it into like a volcano, throw it in the volcano. Of course, that's not exactly what happened, because what turns out, and this is where everything comes full circle, is that all those body parts start to, because they throw the body parts into like a lake or like a pond, and those body parts they like dissolve, and people start drinking that water, and guess what? They start getting real big. They start growing like crazy, until they're all sorts of giants roaming around. First they're naked, and then they find out that they can kind of like, if they eat enough people, that they'll grow like a second. They'll get I'm just saying I can't remember exactly how they get the moo-moos on them, but that's how that all happened. How big? Oh, you'd say Allan Resnicks wants to know how big it was. I would say probably like the size of if you put like how big is that? That's probably about like 80 or 90 feet tall. So not skyscrapers, definitely not skyscrapers, but definitely big enough to, if they were to grab you and pop you in their mouth and eat you up, and turn you in, and then sweat you out, and so it can feed you the moo. That's gonna be like a just one swift single motion. So that's how the giants that were causing so much trouble in the beginning happened. But the fact is that when and this is going back to the beginning, and we can end at the beginning because we started with the end. It turned out that the essence, when it got out of town, after it blew up the guy's head and it got out of town and it started eating trees, it realized that it wasn't angry anymore because of the calming effects of all the chlorophyll in all the tree leaves. And so it made it. So it walked its way. It stood up like a big long thing, and it walked back to the town, and it had like a little human face at the bottom of it. So again, kind of deflated dog member with human arms and hands for legs, except for at the very bottom of it, it had a much bigger set of arms and hands. Not a log, Allan, not a log. But with a little tiny human face at top. And it says, I want to talk to Banky. And Banky comes out and he says, are you the essence? Are you that crazy thing that came out of the pipe and blew up the Governor Mayor Genki's head? And the essence says, yeah, that's me. I'm crazy. Or I used to be crazy. But then I ate all these trees, and now I'm going to and I realized I wasn't so mad no more. And Banky says, well, that's good, right? And the essence is like, yeah, that's good as hell. Anyway, I heard you guys got a problem with these giants coming out and eating everybody off the walls. First of all, why do you have so many? First of all, you probably shouldn't leave people on the walls if people are so easy to. It doesn't matter. Second of all, Banky says, yeah, do you think you could talk to the giants? And the essence is like, what, you think because we're just a bunch of crazy monsters that we all talk to each other and have like a secret language and we can tell each other what to do? And Banky says, well, yeah, I mean, I think that's just the nature of these kind of mythological creatures that we have back in this time period. And the essence says, yeah, you're right. And so the essence went and talked to the giants and says, hey, you guys got to stop eating all these people in that walled city over there. And the giants all speak with one single voice because they all ate the devil's body, drank the devil's body. So they all had the devil's voice, and they say, we're the devil. And then the essence is like, well, if you're the devil, I'm the angelic horde. And that's when he bursts apart into like a billion angels. And the angels kill the devil all over again. And this time they take all the body part, because now it's like, first it was like a head. It was like a head, 2 arms, and 2 legs, and a few other parts. But now it's like 700 or 800 of these 90 tall giants. So they really got their work cut out for them. But they are like, we're gonna fix it. We're gonna really take this to a volcano. And they took all the body parts to a volcano and dumped them in, and that killed the devil for at least another 2,000 or 3,000 years until Jesus Christ came along. So the moral of the story is that you kind of, just when you think things are getting a little too dicey, things may turn around for you. And if you're too comfortable, then watch out, because that's when the devil could be. The point of the story is this. Even if something like crazy comes out of the sewer and starts killing people don't just turn it away, or don't just assume that it's all going to be a bleak ending for you. And if you're on vacation, just make sure to always check above you, like the roof and the ceiling and the rafters, because that's where the devil is. Thanks for sticking around, everybody. Good night.